It was the day of my nephew's first birthday, an event we had been eagerly anticipating. To celebrate this joyful occasion, a grand party was arranged at my sister's house, and all of us had to go there to join the festivities. Unfortunately, on the same day, I had a very important presentation at the university that I couldn't miss. Therefore, I decided to attend my classes, complete my presentation, and join my family at the party a little later instead of missing either event. While my family left in the morning to buy presents and make preparations for the event, I took the duplicate keys to the house and left for the university. In the afternoon, having finished my presentation and other classes, I returned home. Because of my large family with 5 siblings, my grandparents and my nephews and nieces, my house was usually filled with voices. Having gotten used to that lively atmosphere, the echoing silence that shrouded my house at that time seemed very strange and haunting to me. Feeling a bit uneasy with the unusually quiet atmosphere, I left the main door ajar, both intentionally and ignorantly, unable to later discern the reason behind doing so. As I moved through the corridor to the kitchen for water, I found a note pasted on the refrigerator. It was a reminder from my mother instructing me to lock all the doors and windows and turn off the power button before leaving. Thinking that I might forget to do so later, I promptly closed the kitchen window and switched off the power button before heading to my room. In my room, I took a short nap, went to take a shower, and began getting ready for the birthday party. After spending a few hours on that, I finally got ready, called the cab, and began to click a few photos of myself until the cab arrived. While engrossed in this, I suddenly heard something fall in the kitchen, with its sound echoing throughout the house, which left me startled. After standing frozen in shock for a few moments, I slowly approached the door, pressing my ear against it to listen closely. After a few moments of silence, I heard footsteps in the kitchen, along with the sounds of utensils being moved here and there on the slabs. It seemed as if someone was walking around in the kitchen, searching for something, which left me frightened. Trembling with fear, I quickly locked the door of my room, wondering who the person could be. It dawned on me that I had forgotten to lock the front door upon entering, possibly allowing an intruder to easily get inside. Along with realizing my mistake, I also acknowledged that there was nothing I could do except for waiting and hoping that the unseen intruder would not venture further and harm me. After a tense wait, I suddenly began to hear footsteps approaching my room, causing shivers to run down my spine. With my heart racing out of fear and anxiety, I began to push the door to make sure it could not be opened, despite knowing that it was locked. However, to my relief, the person did not stop in front of the door but quickly moved on, making their way from the living room and eventually reaching the main door. Upon reaching there, the sound of the footsteps began to fade away until it could no longer be heard. Thinking that the mysterious person must have left, I stood silently behind the door for a few moments and then slowly opened it, confused about why the person had secretly entered and left like that in the first place. Coming out of the room, I grabbed an umbrella to use as a weapon just in case I came across someone and cautiously went to the kitchen, finding nothing except a broken flower pot lying on the floor near the window. Looking around, I was shocked to find the kitchen window, which I had closed, wide open. There were muddy footprints all around in the kitchen, and it seemed as if someone had entered using the kitchen window and had left from the same path. However, recalling the footsteps that I heard in front of my room made me confused about what had happened and how many people were actually inside. Moreover, the power button I switched off before going to my room was now on, and the most unsettling thing of all was the note my mother pasted on the refrigerator that got replaced by another one. This new note was actually a warning from my father, a lawyer, threatening him to give up on the case he was working on or face severe consequences. Realizing my ignorance had nearly led to a life-threatening situation, I trembled with fear and anxiety, grabbing the kitchen slab to steady myself. After calming down, I closed the kitchen window again and searched the house to ensure nobody was inside. After a thorough search throughout my house, I reached the main door and locked it. As I was doing that, I heard voices from the outside and peered through the window, finding a group of children playing cricket in the street. Considering that they must have seen the intruder entering and leaving the house, I called them inside to ask. However, they informed me that they had not seen anything unusual. They revealed that the flower pot in our kitchen fell because of the cricket ball that came inside from the kitchen window and struck it. They informed me that since the door was ajar, one of them entered the house to take the ball. After searching a little, he found the ball and returned using the main door, causing me to realize that the footsteps I heard outside my room were not of a dangerous intruder, but of a child. However, who else entered the house, switched on the power button, and replaced the note on the refrigerator was still a mystery that left me increasingly confused. Turning to the children, I gently scolded them for entering someone's house without permission, forbidding them to do it again. However, a more significant scolding occurred within me as I reflected on my own ignorance, despite knowing how common robberies and other crimes were in those days. It was a dark and silent night, and the only sound echoing in our home was the ticking of the wall clock. My parents and siblings had to go to a family gathering while I decided to stay back and study, thanks to the looming threat of my final exams. Being comfortable staying alone, I assured my parents that I would be completely okay, telling them not to worry about me and enjoy the event. However, despite that, they made sure to lock every door and window of the house before leaving, just to ensure my safety. After they left, I closed the main door, went to the kitchen, heated up the pasta for dinner, and started to enjoy it. After finishing the meal, I went to my room and sat at the study table, opening my books and skimming through my notes. As I got deeply engrossed in my studies, I did not realize that 3 hours had passed when an unexpected knock came at the door, breaking the monotony of the quiet night. Startled by the knock at such a late hour, I glanced at the clock, puzzled by who would be visiting at such a time. After silently hearing the knocks for a few moments, I reluctantly got up from the chair and approached the door cautiously, my heart racing out of anxiety. Getting near the door, I started to hear the footsteps. It seemed as if someone was anxiously walking here and there on the porch, waiting for the door to open. As I reached the door, I hesitated for a moment, and then asked who it was. In response, a grave, masculine voice spoke from the other side. "Please open the door. I'm in huge trouble. Our car crashed into a tree nearby, and my family members have gotten extremely injured. I would be really thankful if you help me give the necessary first aid to them." Although his words caused me to feel a little sympathy for him, my instincts screamed at me to be cautious. Considering that I did not hear the sound of a car crash at all, and he would have gone to the clinic on the corner of the same street, I felt a little suspicious. Moreover, the urgency in the stranger's voice seemed very odd for someone who had just been in an accident. With all these thoughts in mind, I decided to peek through the window right next to the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of the person standing outside. This way, I thought I could figure out more about the situation by looking at whether the person was an accident victim in the first place. As I tried to look closely at the figure barely illuminated by the dim porch light, it sent shivers down my spine. The person standing at the doorstep was a tall and muscular figure whose features were hidden in the shadows. To my shock, the person looked far too well groomed and put together for someone who had just been in an accident. There was something about the situation that felt very off, raising my suspicion more and more. As I continued to scrutinize every detail about the stranger while pressing my face against the cold glass, the person suddenly felt it and quickly turned to the window, noticing me staring at him. As our eyes met, a chill ran down my spine, and I began to tremble with fear, realizing that his eyes seemed empty, devoid of any emotion or sincerity. The strange aura surrounding that person led me to decide not to trust him, and I pulled the curtain back. My heart raced with fear and anxiety, and I began to regret my decision to stay back alone, since the situation that was unfolding made me unable to focus on my studies anyway. Deciding to lock myself up in the room until my family returned, I summoned courage and backed away from the door, making sure not to make a sound. Meanwhile, the stranger continued to knock and plead from the other side, their tone growing more insistent. These voices clawed the edges of my mind with panic, and I covered my ears with my hands, quickly running towards the living room. However, before the situation could get worse, I suddenly heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway, causing a wave of relief to wash over me. My brother, who was feeling a little unwell and had left the gathering early, had returned. The stranger at the door, must have heard the approaching vehicle as well, for he swiftly turned and disappeared into the night. Rushing back to the window, I peered out just in time to see my brother stepping out of his car. With confusion etched across his face, he suddenly started to scan the surroundings, having felt the presence and undoubtedly wondering why someone had been lurking near our home. Quickly opening the door, I went to him, expressing my relief to see him back as tears began to stream down my face. "Hey, is everything okay?" he called out, his voice carrying a mix of concern and confusion. Wiping away my tears, I explained everything that happened, recounting the stranger's arrival, his pleas for help, and the unsettling feeling that lingered in the air. Hearing about the encounter, my brother's expression darkened as if he had figured out the intentions of the person who came. That is why he wasted no time alerting the authorities and calling the police over. The police arrived shortly afterward, conducting a thorough search of the area around our house. However, there was no trace of the mysterious stranger or a car accident anywhere in the vicinity, proving that the person was making up a story just to convince me to open the door. It all began with the sudden illness of my mother. While preparing dinner one day, she suddenly fell and lost consciousness, prompting my father to rush her to the hospital, leaving me alone in the house. Because of the extremely cold weather outside, he told me to stay in my room and keep the doors and windows shut until they returned, giving me his cell phone for contact. Despite feeling a little anxious for my mother's well-being, I agreed to stay behind as they left in an emergency. Locking up the doors of the house, I came to my room and crouched in the bed, feeling cold because of the chilling weather at night. Since I could not fall asleep because of the anxiety about my mother's well-being, I decided to wait for my father's call to be assured before falling asleep. Therefore, I turned on the television and began to watch a movie. After half an hour, my phone finally rang, and I quickly reached for it, finding it to be a call from my father. Quickly picking up the phone, I asked my father about the condition of my mother. Speaking from the other side with his voice laden with worry and exhaustion, he explained that my mother had a panic attack because of the increasing workload in her office and was temporarily hospitalized. Considering that he could not leave me alone in the house at night, he said that he had arranged for my aunt to stay with me for the night. This made me a little relieved, considering that my aunt was a very nice and friendly woman whose company made me very comfortable. Agreeing with my father's decision, I hung up the call and came out of the room to bring water from the kitchen. However, just as I stepped out of my room, I suddenly noticed the knob of the main door to be slightly rotating. It creaked softly, as if someone on the other side was trying to gain entry into the house secretly. Scared and bewildered by such an unexpected situation, I quickly returned to my room and closed the door behind me. A shiver crawled down my spine as I glanced at the clock. It was too early for my aunt to arrive, especially considering the hour-long drive from her house. It is said that we usually lose control over our senses when we suddenly experience something totally unexpected. The same happened to me as I anxiously began to walk here and there in the room, contemplating what to do. By a stroke of luck, I suddenly noticed my father's phone lying on the side table and got an idea. Quickly reaching for the phone, I opened the contact list, finding the contact number of our neighbors in the emergency call list. Quickly dialing his number, I anxiously awaited them to pick up the call. Luckily, they picked up the call, and I informed them about the entire situation, requesting that they come over to check. In response, their kind voices comforted me, telling me not to worry and urging me to lock myself in the bathroom until the situation was resolved. With fear gnawing at my insides, I obeyed their advice and quickly went to the bathroom, considering it to be the safest place at the moment. Hiding there while covering my face to avoid making a sound, I focused on the sounds coming from the porch when the main door suddenly opened. Following that, the sounds of hushed whispers and the ominous shuffle of multiple footsteps became louder and clearer. Panic gripped me, and I pressed my ear against the bathroom door, desperately trying to figure out what was happening. Thoroughly searched through the house, a voice that sounded very familiar to me commanded the rest of the people. Complying, all of them started to move through the house, their steps drawing closer and closer to my room. For quite some time, I kept hearing the sounds of creaking floorboards that sent chills down my spine. My heart raced as I felt the doors of the rooms being opened one by one, thinking that it would soon be the turn of my room to be searched. As the bathroom door shuddered under the weight of an unseen force, I clutched my phone like a lifeline. The reality of the situation hit me. A home invasion was unfolding before me. The robbers, their faces concealed in the shadows, methodically rummaged through our belongings, hunting for anything of value. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a sudden commotion erupted from the living room. A commanding voice, stern and authoritative, sliced through the air, leaving the intruders confused. The unexpected hero was none other than our neighbor, a retired Army officer who had taken my call seriously and came to check over, sensing that something was strange. The good thing was that he was not alone, but came with a group of people that he gathered to investigate. Armed with a gun, he confronted the intruders, who were so engrossed in stealing away the things from our house that they were easily caught off guard. The tables had turned, and the panic that I was feeling until a while ago swept through the thieves. The retired officer and his makeshift team apprehended the intruders with precision born of years of military training. As the authorities were summoned, my aunt also arrived, her eyes widening in shock at the scene that had unfolded. Hearing her voice, I quickly came out of the bathroom and embraced her tightly, expressing how scared I was. However, what was more shocking to me was the identity of the leader of the thieves, who turned out to be our gardener, who my father had fired from the job a few months ago because of a complaint from our neighbors.